She walked out from the side of the stage without announcement. No music. No introduction. No one had called her name. Zelda Williams stepped into the light of the Tonight Show stage, and Jimmy Fallon's face did something that faces do when the body has given up trying to stay composed. His eyes filled. His mouth pressed together, and then released. And for 11 seconds, the cameras counted them later. Because the control room couldn't move either. He could not speak. 300 people in the studio had gone completely still, the way a room goes still when something enters it that is larger than the room itself. It was a Wednesday night taping. March 2024. The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. The segment had been booked as a tribute, a celebration of what would have been Robin Williams' 72nd birthday. There was archival footage prepared. There were guests lined up who had known him. The producers had spent 2 weeks assembling the pieces, and they were proud of it, and it was going to be good. Questlove had selected the music personally. The lighting team had done something careful and warm with the stage. The audience had come knowing what the evening was. They had been told at the door, quietly, so they could prepare themselves. Everyone had prepared themselves. Jimmy Fallon had read the rundown 7 times that morning. He thought he was ready. He was not ready. The tribute segment had been running for 4 minutes. Footage was playing. Laughter was moving through the audience in gentle waves, the particular laughter of people remembering something they loved. And then from somewhere backstage, near the entrance to the main stage, a figure appeared in the wing. Not announced, not cued, just standing there, waiting. A stage manager saw her first and froze. Then the floor director, then the camera operator on camera 2, who slowly, without being told, turned his lens toward the wing and held it there. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a woman standing in the dark at the edge of a stage, waiting to be ready. Zelda Williams stood very still for a moment, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes on the screen where her father's face was playing. Her chin moved once, the small controlled movement of someone keeping something contained. Then, she stepped forward into the light, and the audience saw her. And the laughter stopped the way laughter stops when something real replaces it. Jimmy Fallon saw her at exactly that moment. His head turned, and his face changed. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in the summer of 1993. Robin Williams wasn't always Robin Williams, the legend. He had been famous for 15 years by then. Mork, Mrs. Doubtfire was in post-production, and he could not walk through an airport without being stopped every 40 feet. But fame of that scale does something to a man's interior life, and by 1993, he was in the middle of quietly trying to understand what was still real, what still belonged to him, what could not be taken by the machinery of being known everywhere and needed by everyone. He was 41 years old. He had a daughter who was 9. Her name was Zelda, named for the video game princess, because he had been playing Zelda when he found out his wife was pregnant, and thought it was the most beautiful name he had ever heard. She was a small girl with dark hair and serious eyes, and an absolute refusal to be impressed by anything Hollywood produced. She had grown up backstage and on sets, had been handed around at parties to people who called her adorable without really seeing her, and had developed, by age 9, a finely calibrated sense for who was performing affection and who was actually present. Most people were performing. Her father was always present. That summer, he took her with him to San Francisco for 3 days while he did some voice work at a studio on Brannan Street. She was not supposed to come. The schedule was tight, and the sessions were long. But she had asked him, and he had said yes. because he almost always said yes to her, and because she had looked at him with those serious eyes and said, "I just want to watch." He had laughed. She watched everything, noted everything, filed it away somewhere behind her steady gaze and never said much about it. And then, years later, when you had forgotten you'd done anything worth watching, she would reference it with the precision of someone who had been taking notes. On the second evening, when the session ran long and her nanny had taken her back to the hotel, she had waited up. It was past 11 when he got back. She was sitting at the small desk in the room with the hotel stationery in front of her, and she had written him a letter. 9 years old, 2 pages, in the handwriting of a child who was already taking the weight of language seriously. She pushed it across the desk without explanation when he came in. He sat on the edge of the bed and read it. She had written about the voices, about the way he became different people without warning, not scary different, she was careful to say, not the kind of different that made her worried, but different the way a river is different when it passes through different kinds of country. She had written, "When you do the voices, I can tell which one is most you. I think the quiet one is most you. I think you are actually quiet inside, and all the loud ones are just because you love people, and you want them to be happy, and you will make any noise necessary. I think that is very brave. I don't think people know you are actually quiet." She had folded it twice and drawn a small owl on the outside, her own symbol, her private mark that she put on the things she made for him, because she had been reading about owls that week and had decided they were the best animal because they saw in the dark and didn't make a lot of noise about it. He had read it 3 times that night. Then he had folded it very carefully and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. The jacket was a dark navy blazer he wore constantly that year. The pocket was on the left side, over his chest. He kept the letter. Not in a drawer, not in an archive, not in the careful storage system that his assistant maintained for the papers and artifacts that accumulated around a life of that size. In his wallet, eventually, when the jacket wore out and was retired. Then in a small envelope that lived in his left breast pocket of whatever jacket he was wearing on any given day, because he had decided, somewhere around 1995, that it was the kind of thing that needed to stay close. She grew up. He watched her with the same quality of attention she had always turned on him. She became a person of serious gifts, an actor, a writer, someone with a genuine and unglamorous relationship with the work. Someone who had inherited his full presence without inheriting his need to fill every silence. They had the kind of friendship that is the best version of what a parent and child can become when both of them are honest. They disagreed about things. They agreed about more. They talked on the phone for long stretches about books, about craft, about the specific difficulty of being recognizable in a world that mistakes recognition for understanding. In August 2014, Robin Williams died. He was 63 years old. Among the things Zelda Williams found afterward, going through the quiet, devastated work of his belongings, was a small envelope in the inside breast pocket of the jacket he had been wearing. Inside it, folded twice, with a small owl drawn on the outside, in the handwriting of a 9-year-old girl who had been taking notes. The letter from the hotel room in San Francisco. He had carried it for 21 years. She had not known he still had it. She had carried that fact, the knowledge that he had kept it, that it had lived against his chest for 2 decades, that it had traveled with him to every set and every city and every difficult night. The way you carry something that is too large to put down and too precious to share. For 9 years, she had not spoken about the letter publicly. She had not been ready. You do not offer up the most private thing at the first moment someone asks for it. The Tonight Show's producers had reached out to Zelda Williams 4 months before the tribute broadcast. She had said she would think about it. She had thought about it for 3 months and 26 days. Then she had called the producer back and said, "I want to bring something. I want to do it live. I don't want a script." And she had said, "I want to bring the letter." The producers had said yes. Then they had told no one. Behind the scenes, Jimmy Fallon had made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. When the segment producer told him, 2 hours before the taping, that Zelda Williams was in the building and intended to walk out unannounced, he had been quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Don't put anything on the teleprompter for after. Don't give me a cue card. Don't tell me what to say." He said, "If I know what's coming, I'll prepare for it, and it'll look like I prepared for it." He said, "I don't want to perform this one." The producer had been nervous. Live television without a net is a specific kind of terrifying. She had said, "Are you sure?" He had said, "Robin Williams never prepared for the quiet moments either." The producer had not had an answer for that. So the segment ran. The footage played. The laughter moved through the room. And Zelda Williams stood in the wing with a small envelope in her hands, waiting to be ready. She had not told the floor director exactly when she would walk out. She had said, "I'll know when." She knew when. But this is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Zelda Williams crossed the stage to where Jimmy Fallon was standing. He had risen from his desk without knowing he was going to. The way the body moves before the mind has caught up. And she held out the small envelope. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were very bright. She said, "He kept this. For 21 years. I found it in his pocket." Jimmy Fallon took the envelope. His hands were not steady. She said, "It's a letter I wrote him when I was 9. In a hotel room in San Francisco. I told him I thought he was quiet inside." She stopped. Her voice was even and careful. The voice of someone who has decided in advance how much to give. She said, "I don't know if I was right. I think I was right." Jimmy Fallon opened his mouth, closed it. She said, "I wanted people to know that he carried it, that it was on him every day. Because I think people thought he was performing all the time, and he wasn't. There was a person in there who read a 9-year-old's letter and thought it was worth keeping." She said, "I wanted people to know that." Jimmy Fallon's voice, when it finally came, was barely above a whisper, caught perfectly by his microphone. He said, "He knew." He said, "He knew who you were." His voice broke cleanly on the last word, and he did not try to recover it. 300 strangers were crying. Not performing crying, the private, unguarded kind that happens when something bypasses every defense you built. Questlove had his head bowed. The camera operator on camera 2 was not adjusting his shot. The director in the control room had not cut to commercial, and was not going to cut to commercial. The producer, who had been nervous about the lack of a teleprompter, had both hands pressed flat on the console in front of her, and was not moving them. Jimmy Fallon stepped forward and put his arms around Zelda Williams, and she let him, briefly, the way private people accept comfort, with grace and a short duration. When she stepped back, she looked at the envelope still in his hands and said, "Will you keep it tonight?" He nodded. He couldn't speak again. That was all right. Nothing needed to be said. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Nobody counted. They counted it later. Zelda Williams left the stage the way she had arrived, quietly, without announcement. The tribute continued, and it was good, as it was always going to be good, but the room had been changed by what had moved through it, and the footage that followed was watched by people who were seeing it differently than they had seen anything that evening. The small envelope was returned to Zelda Williams the following morning, by a production assistant who drove it to her hotel personally, with a note from Jimmy Fallon that contained 4 words. She has not said what the 4 words were. She has said they were right. The letter itself has never been published. Zelda Williams has said she intends to keep it that way. Some things, she has said, are not public property. Some things belong to the person who wrote them and the person who kept them, and the keeping was the story, not the words. Robin Williams kept a great deal of things no one knew about. That is the thing about quiet people who make a great deal of noise. The noise is the gift they give the world. The quiet is the life they lived inside it. What you carry against your chest is who you actually are.